my mother's mother. Dad was really a wanderer. He had wandering in his soul, but he also had deep, deep, deep dreams. He planted those dreams very deeply. I trace his wanderlust to his own family's past. He had been born out of wedlock, a very sad thing, and never knew his father, or even his father's identity. His mother would never tell him. In those days, you were not accepted if you didn't know who your father was. But he told me that if he ever misbehaved, she would say, "Don't you act up. You're from a very, very fine line of people on your daddy's side. That's not in you to do that." How could she tease him that way? How difficult it must have been for him. My daddy had a dignity that I just adored. I would call it a little aristocratic. He was always different, not in the Southern good old boy mold. He had always liked to ramble, to explore. He loved hunting. He loved his hunting dogs. He hunted rabbits. He hunted squirrels. He hunted everything, birds, anything that there was to hunt. My daddy was hunting, and he was happy about that. At 16, he lied about his age to the U.S. Navy. Well, he sailed around the world. Later, he spent months riding freight trains across the country, exploring again. And of course, he bonded with the other men of the rails, all the other hobos. He liked that life. He told me many stories about that time. My mother had a bit more weight in her shoes. Perhaps she had to because she grew up in a house with 14 other children. She couldn't have gotten much attention as a child, but she certainly learned how to keep a house running. Mother's family lived on a farm, and in addition to her chores there, she helped attend to her brothers and sisters and the children of other families who were working in the fields. Ultimately, she was the glue that kept our family together. She, too, never knew her father. He had died when she was just 2 years old from a gunshot wound in a hunting accident. But there was a strict stepfather in her childhood. Their home, a simple, undistinguished structure, sat among other identical homes in the Cone textile mills. That was in a community in Greensboro, North Carolina. As a little girl, I think she was only 14 years old, she worked in the mills. That was hard work for a child, and that work would later lead her to have a terrible disease, emphysema. But I'm sure my mother never complained. It wasn't in her to complain. Was she spinning dreams in that mill of hopelessness? She never told me. Mother and Daddy grew up in an area of North Carolina that was very rich in cotton and tobacco. Everyone knows North Carolina for its textile industry. But that industry boomed on the backs of people like my parents. All their lives, when they weren't hoeing and picking cotton, they were toiling in the mills on the northeast side of Greensboro. Neither of their families owned land. They sharecropped other people's land and hired themselves out to work on other farms. This way of life and this way of work continued on and off through their adulthood, even after their young family became professional singers. My parents' paths converged because of music. Daddy had played guitar and had sung in a quartet that included Mother's brother and her stepfather. It was unusual, given to the place and the times, that it also included a black man who lived in the area. The group probably had to sneak around because in North Carolina in those days, races simply didn't mix. The ensemble practiced, perhaps very quietly, at my mother's home. And that's where my daddy had his first glimpse of her. Soon, Liddy and Jess, as they were known at the time, discovered their own harmony. They talked together when the quartet wasn't practicing and began to see each other somewhat regularly. Back to the story. They were married on March 12, 1924. Almost 4 years later, my eldest brother Kenneth made it a threesome. He was born on February 11, 1928. A daughter, Doris Louise, had been born in 1926, but she died while Mother was pregnant with my brother Kenneth. Doris Louise, from everything my mother and Daddy have told me, was talented and bright and just a very, very special little girl. I always wanted to know my sister. The restlessness in my daddy's character resurfaced in the early years of his marriage. He was arrested for bootlegging, a common practice in those days and a necessity for him in order to bring in scarce dollars. While those charges were dropped,